Welcome back, everyone, to Housing with Hillel. I'm very excited to welcome our second guest, Jane Ullman. Thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
Last episode, we were speaking about the different processes involved in purchasing a property in Israel. The fifth step that we spoke about is the closing. Can you please tell us a little bit about what that process looks like?
So closing in Israel doesn't really exist in the same way that people think of in America, where you pay your money and get keys and title all at once. And in Israel, the process just doesn't work like that. And you're signing the contract and you give your initial down payment. And against that payment, you get a security on the property, which secures your rights. And then oftentimes the payments can be spread out over 3, 6, 9, even 12 months and kind of like a layaway plan where you make payments along the way. Again, your rights are secured by the lien that you have from the initial payment. And the quote unquote closing, which we would call transfer of possession, is at the end of the process. And against the very last payment that you're making, you would get keys and then the documents you need to transfer title. Again, it's not the same kind of idea because title gets transferred actually after you already have possession of the house, usually a few months after. So it's a much more long, drawn out process, which sounds crazy to people outside of Israel, but there are mechanisms in place to secure your rights.
So from the time that someone, let's say, agrees to a price for purchasing a property until that contract is actually signed, what needs to happen?
So it's kind of like a parallel track where, if you kind of imagine one of those circus tricks where they have the spinning plates in the air and you kind of get all your plates spinning at once and do your checks in tandem. So the first thing is that we get a draft of the contract. I would review the contract and negotiate the actual wording of the contract, the declarations, things like that. The second most important thing that happens in parallel is that your attorney will check title. In Israel, there is no title insurance, and your attorney serves that function, which is another reason why you need to use someone really experienced, because title in Israel can be registered in more than one government body or a combination thereof, depending on where the property is located.
Right.
So the checking of title is the second most important step. And then the other aspects of due diligence, which are performed, are structural inspection, planning inspection, appraisal for value, making sure that you have your financing. All of those kinds of things are done before you sign a contract in Israel because there are no contingencies for inspection, financing, anything like that. All your due diligence is done before you sign.
On average, how long would you say it takes from the time that they've agreed, okay, we're going to buy a place at this price until that contract is signed with all those different things you spoke about?
I would generally say the average is a month. I have deals that I sign within a few days and other deals which take a couple months, 3 months, even sometimes longer, depending on how complicated it is. It also depends on the specifics of the buyer. For instance, someone who is having me represent them and they're not in Israel, I need a variety of documents, power of attorney and a few other documents that have to be signed and notarized and then apostilled or signed at the consulate outside of the country. Especially today during the period of Corona, that's an important difference regarding the timing because everything is moving much more slowly outside of the country. So we have to definitely allow for that.
It leads me to my next question I was going to ask is what's been the biggest change you've seen due to the pandemic?
So the differences that we see with Corona really have to do with timing and also a lot of apprehension about unknown complications that come up. So we have a lot more, what if I can't get to the bank? What if I can't move out on time? What if I can't get this document because the government isn't functioning? Or what happens if I'm in quarantine? Or what happens if we get put in lockdown? So we have started putting in what we affectionately call Corona clauses, which allow for delays, honest delays, justifiable delays. If, for instance, someone is in quarantine or lockdown and they can't get to the bank to make a payment, or if the bank suddenly shuts down and they won't make their mortgage payment, those kinds of things. So there is differences of opinion, and also there's starting to be court cases regarding whether or not these kinds of delays are considered act of God and justifiable. And the main wisdom really is if you can show that it was really unavoidable, then it's considered a justifiable delay. However, some of the bigger contractors have been trying to use this as an excuse for huge delays in transfer of possession, and that's not really going to fly. But again, it's unknown territory, and we're going to have to see how it plays out.
Okay, well, thank you so much for all of your really important and helpful insights. Really appreciate you taking out some of your time to come join us in your beautiful backyard. And we hope to have you back again soon.
Pleasure. Thanks so much.